Jimin shows the trending news articles about Lee Jian, which makes Lee Jian quite curious. As he scrolls through the comments, Lee Jian becomes furious but quickly suppresses his emotions, dismissing the negativity as trivial. However, his attention is drawn to an article discussing his will. Lee Jian recalls that he had agreed to donate all his properties and possessions to orphans. But as he continues reading, Lee Jian discovers that his wealth was instead passed on to the 12 saints. Furious, Lee Jian crushes the smartphone, vowing to rip the saints apart, making Jimin cry down on his shattered phone. Sitting back down, Lee Jian contemplates his situation. Even though he wants to announce his return, he realizes his appearance has drastically changed over the past 20 years. If he openly claimed to be Lee Jian, people might think he's insane. Resolving to stay quiet for now, Lee Jian decides to handle the saints one by one. Suddenly, a green screen appears in front of Lee Jian, alerting him that someone is watching him. Recognizing the presence, Lee Jian abruptly leaves the restaurant, claiming he needs fresh air. Stepping outside, he notices a massive household god in the distance. The screen identifies it as belonging to Ares. Enraged, Lee Jian mutters about their audacity, calling them nothing more than slaves to the divine gods. As Lee Jian processes the situation, he overhears a couple walking by. The man complains about how noisy it's become with everyone talking about Lee Jian, questioning why he gets so much attention since he's a lost cause. The woman smiles and agrees, mocking Lee Jian's legacy. Jimin notices a brooch on the man's coat, indicating they're part of the Gemini divine cadre. He quickly warns Lee Jian not to engage with them. However, the man approaches Lee Jian to ask him to move out, blowing cigarette smoke in his face and taunting him to fight if he's angry. Before Lee Jian can react, the woman drags the man away, calling Lee Jian a coward and remarking that losers like him were the type to idolize Lee Jian. She speculates that the idea of Lee Jian being a saint must have been a lie. Jimin praises Lee Jian for holding his anger, noting that the couple are A-rank. But Lee Jian, unable to control his rage, turns around and calls out to them, addressing them as roaches. The couple stops, turning back to confirm what Lee Jian just called them. Without hesitation, Lee Jian doubles down, affirming that the two of them are nothing but cockroaches. The scene continues as the man walks up to Lee Jian, challenging him to repeat what he just called them. But Lee Jian remained unfazed. The person taunted to say that Lee Jian was a mere regular person, someone from whom he couldn't even feel a speck of mana. But with a flick of his finger, Lee Jian sends the man flying into the air, creating a huge scene. Everyone is shocked upon seeing this, and the girl sneakily tries to land an attack on Lee Jian from behind. Noticing her, Lee Jian remarks, asking if she really thought he wouldn't notice what she was up to. With another flick of his finger, Lee Jian sends her flying back into the air. Jimin's friend, worried, tells Lee Jian that he shouldn't use his abilities like that in the middle of the street, to which Lee Jian replies that they would have been dead if he had actually used his ability. Hearing this, both boys are shocked at how Lee Jian managed to overpower A-ranked disciples with only his finger. Lee Jian bends down and rips off the pendant from the man, remarking that something felt weird about hitting him. He notices the pendant and asks if it's a divine artifact. Then, he questions why those scoundrels had it, as only saints were supposed to possess such items. Jimin, surprised, explains that if Lee Jian really doesn't know anything, humanity had almost gone extinct due to the calamities several decades ago. It was only thanks to the divine gods and the saints they chose that humanity managed to survive. However, since the entire world couldn't be protected by just 12 saints, the saints gathered followers and made them divine cadres. These were people who awakened by being granted power from the saints and were referred to as disciples. Their ranks were proportional to their power. The saints chosen by the divine gods were at the top, then 10 stars could be considered saint candidates. The strongest disciples who commanded the others were called divine cadre captains, while the rest were simply disciples. The divine gods' power came from the faith of their disciples. As a result, there were constant competitions to recruit more people into their divine cadres. The chosen disciples were then granted gifts from the divine gods. Hearing all this, Lee Jian realizes that all of this had taken place during the 20 years he had been away. His thoughts are interrupted by Jimin, who calls out and asks him to look up at the sky. As Lee Jian looks up, a screen appears, revealing that the households of wealth and greed under Ares were watching the situation. They seemed to be enjoying the chaos and urged Lee Jian to finish off the man and the woman, promising him a useful gift if he killed the two. Jimin's friend, shocked, realizes that Lee Jian has caught the attention of the household gods. He explains that these entities were like shadows of the divine gods, so opposing them would be the same as opposing the divine gods themselves. Jimin's friend urgently asks Lee Jian to heed the gods' words. Lee Jian, however, nonchalantly says that he had been wondering why Yang Wei's goons were in a place like that. He concludes that they were likely trying to fill their stomachs through such means, noting that Yang Wei hadn't changed at all. With that, Lee Jian leaps toward the household gods, as he crunches the ground, creating an aura blast that scatters them. He declares that they dared to stand against him, mocking their arrogance. Jimin is stunned upon witnessing the Aries gods fleeing and realizes that Lee Jian is definitely not an ordinary person. Lee Jian then asks Jimin about the man lying on the floor, specifically if he is also a disciple of Gemini. Jimin confirms this, adding that Gemini's divine cadre has the most influence in the country and is an elite force consisting of several influential figures. Lee Jian remarks that they must have a lot of money, concluding that everything the man was wearing would be branded clothing. With that, Lee Jian begins looting the unconscious man. The scene shifts to the apartments, where Jimin tells Lee Jian that he lives in the apartment on the second level, the one with no lights on. Jimmy tries to thank Lee Jian for saving their lives and bringing them home, bowing his head down. But hearing no response, he sneaks a peek, noticing that Lee Jian is yawning and asking if he's coming inside since he's sleepy. Jimmy gets furious, asking if Lee Jian plans to mooch off him in his own house. In Jimin's homes, Lee Jian shaves off his beard and watches his reflection in the mirror, admiring his handsome face in the mirror. Jimin, slightly mesmerized, asks if he cut his hair and compliments him, saying he looks cool. Lee Jian asks if that's so, smiling inwardly, thinking that in the past, every strand of hair was precious since he kept losing it as a side effect of his abilities, and now he gets to style it freely. But feeling an uneasy sensation, Lee Jian questions why there's a calamity in the house. Sensing a fly buzzing toward him, Lee Jian crushes it with his fist. Jimin asks if he killed it barehanded, saying even professionals couldn't do that. Lee Jian swats other flies, stating that it's not just one calamity and questioning why they keep coming. Jimin wonders if Lee Jian is giving off a scent that attracts calamities, to which Lee Jian dismissively says it must be something in the house attracting them, likely because of all the evil artifacts. Jimin explains he received the items directly from the Gemini saint and that, although they're his, they've been blessed. As he tries to show them to Lee Jian slices one in two, making Jimin scream and shiver in despair. Lee Jian informs that the mask is a divine artifact that monitors its buyer as he sorts through the items, throwing out another, saying the magical box is a divine artifact that steals personal information, and the watch, which attracts calamities. He states that those saint scoundrels not only steal money but sell evil artifacts to people, feeding off them. Lee Jian gets angry, shouting to throw them all out. The bell rings, and a young man enters. Lee Jian questions who he is, and Jimin calls him Sungjae. Sungjae flares up his aura, stating that he is the owner of this house. The scene then shifts to Aries' divine cadre Yang Wei's residence, where Yang Wei is shocked to hear the report that the household gods in Korea have disappeared. His subordinate confirms that the council branch is in a panic over this. Yang Wei wonders who would dare do such a thing, noting that household gods are direct subordinates of the divine gods, and no awakened would dare chase them away. Yang Wei orders his subordinate to contact the other saints to see if they have any clues, but the subordinate reports that the Sagittarius is still as uncontactable as always. Yang Wei dismisses the issue, assuming the Sagittarius is probably in England as a mercenary. The subordinate adds that, shortly after arriving in England, the Sagittarius left for Korea. Yang Wei grows suspicious, thinking that Hugo, Lee Jian's best friend, may have returned due to rumors of Lee Jian's revival. Wondering if that psycho is really alive, he angrily throws a lamp at his bodyguard, exclaiming that it's impossible. He orders a thorough investigation and asks about other matters. The subordinate informs him that, at the location where the household gods disappeared, a disciple of Gemini was found unconscious, left in only his underwear, lying undressed on the streets. According to witnesses, the culprit was seen with a handsome face. Yang Wei considers that it might not be Lee Jian but acknowledges that the situation is worsening. Rumors of Lee Jian's return are spreading, the household gods have vanished, and they recently failed in their conquest of the Spider Queen. Yang Wei fears his position might be threatened and orders the preparation of his private jet, confirming he's going to Korea to find out what's happening himself. The scene shifts to a Gemini-affiliated hospital in Korea, where an old man demands to know who dared to hurt his grandson like this. A Gemini disciple, Min Sung-hoon, tries to calm him, saying he needn't worry about what happened. That's why the Gemini divine cadre has dispatched him, calling him chairman. Sungjae questions Jimin that he met him at the Demon Tower, and that person defeated the calamities with his bare hands, all by himself. He further asks if he even beat an A-rank disciple, for which Jimin nods his head firmly, confirming it. Sungjae fumes in anger, questioning if Jimin thinks he'll believe that, accusing him of breaking all the divine artifacts in the house. Lee Jian points out that he told them those artifacts were fake. Sungjae questions his divine career and which divine path he's in, but Lee Jian asks if he really needs to follow one. Sungjae then asks which divine god he serves, for which Lee Jian replies it's himself, not the 12 morons. Sungjae, furious, questions Lee Jian's awakened class, to which Lee Jian answers it's a production class. Sung Jae questions Lee Jian's name, and Lee